It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY.
WBNY Buffalo.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of 91.3 FM WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about today's program, you can give us a call at 716-878-5104.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY.
Willie, I'm always heartened when I hear the voice of James Braun, our recently passed producer of this program. It just always warms my heart to hear his voice, and I just want to send a shout out to his family that we still think about him every week.
Yeah, I think about him often. He did a lot for me. He really did a lot for me.
And for those that don't know, this is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome to our broadcast, focused on providing insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call in and join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. So there's always a lot to talk about. It seems like this is we need to go 6 days a week.
No, I don't want to go that much.
I know. It would break us if we did that. But there's so many things going on. I want to build today's program around a theme.
Yeah.
That I hope that we can start to get centered into our spirit.
Yeah. And
the theme is when democracy dies.
Wow.
I was listening to a broadcast, I believe this was Wednesday night, on, I forgot whether it was NBC or MSNBC, whichever it was I was listening to. But they were talking about what happened during the time period when Mussolini was rising up the ranks of the electorate. Remember, Mussolini was not, he wasn't like Genghis Khan that came in from China and conquered Italy. Mm-hmm. He was like a council person,
wow.
A ward supervisor. Mm-hmm. And then he became whatever the equivalent is to a state assembly person.
Wow.
And then from that to a state senator. And then from that, he managed to put himself in line to run for the chancellorship of Italy, won the chancellorship, and he did it by organizing people at the grassroots when he was at the councilman level,
right,
and saying, if we all vote together, we can stop those bad guys, that are running our country, and we can appoint our own people.
Right.
And remember, they have to go through us to be able to count the votes. You know what I mean?
Wow.
The people at the federal level of Italy, they don't count the votes.
Wow.
It's the people down here in Erie County. They're the ones who count the votes.
He fixed it.
So what we do is we just get together and say, no matter what people vote, we're just going to tell them what the vote is.
Right.
And that's how Mussolini rose himself up through power,
wow.
In power. That's what Hitler did, the exact same thing. It's the same thing that Bolsonaro is doing right now. It's the same thing that the Argentina guy, was doing, that Pinochet was doing, and so on. And so we're seeing the same tactics underway in the United States. What they do is we talked about this. Everywhere that the Republicans have been able to gain a majority in a process that is ruled by voting.
Right.
In other words, procedures at your Erie County election board are voted on by a panel of, people who are members of the board of elections,
right,
of Erie County. So if those people are all one party, and they all decide that they're going to just decide everything is going to go the way we want it to go, that's controlled in our level, then you may not be able to trust that when you register to vote, that your vote is registered. You may not be able to trust that even if you register to vote and show up, that your vote is going to be counted, because the people that count the votes are not the people that are at the President of the United States level.
Right.
It's the people down here at the
Grassroots level.
council district
Right.
level or
Right.
ward district level and so on.
Right.
And you can't trust them. Why do I say you can't trust them? In Coffee County in Georgia, and just keep this in your mind, in Coffee County in Georgia, you had Republicans who were running everything in Coffee County. It's a suburban county,
Right.
outside of
Right.
Atlanta. I think it's in the northern third of Georgia. And but you had Republicans in control of the Board of Elections for that county. And they actually physically gave 5 of the voting machines that were used in registering the votes in Coffee County for the 2020 election. They gave 5 of the voting machines to some organization called Cyber Ninjas, and hired by the Republican Party, and allowed them to do what they claimed was a forensic analysis on whether or not the votes were being counted correctly.
Right.
For all you know, they wiped out all of the votes that were on the machine and
Right.
replaced them with the votes that they wanted to put on
Right.
the machine.
Right.
That's illegal. You can't do that.
Right.
You should be going to prison for 5 or 6 years for doing something like
Right.
that. None of them went to prison, right? Nobody. They have county district attorneys, or county attorneys in Cuyahoga. This was a crime similar to robbing a bank, yet nobody went to jail. Nobody even got tried, over this. This is what happens because the Republicans control the process.
Right.
And since they control the process and they're not bound by law, they're not bound by honor, they're only bound by what they can get away with. And they were able to get away with this. This is the distinction between the rule of the Democrats and the rule of the Republicans that we have seen over the past several years. The Democrats, even when the Democrats find somebody among the Democratic Party is doing something that is despicable, that's wrong, the Democrats accuse that person themselves. They prosecute that person themselves. They're the ones who are the source of the accusation of the Democrat doing wrong, and they take the person through the process of prosecution. But the Republicans, they sit on it. Take this fellow George Santos. Remember him, right? I wasn't going to say what I was about to say. Let me stop my mouth. The fellow who they call him a fabulist. in Wednesday's newspaper, I get so resentful of this manipulation of us as a people. They don't refer to him as a liar. That's what a fabulist is. A fabulist is somebody who inflames stuff, exaggerates stuff, right? But exaggeration implies that there is some root truth.
Right.
And what you're doing is expanding the root truth to make it seem like it was more than what it really was.
Right.
That's what being fabulous does, right?
Right.
You're like, what's his name, Rand Paul or Roon Paul?
Roon
Paul,
yeah.
With the ostrich feathers and that,
Right.
whatever that stuff is. That's the fabulous, kind of thing.
Right.
But that's not who George Santos is.
Right.
George Santos is a liar. He's a perjurer. He's a thief. He's a rogue. He's an embezzler. I mean, this is a despicable, creature that has become a congressperson, because people weren't paying attention. They were thinking, oh, he's a fellow Hispanic. It'd be nice to have a Hispanic in this seat. And they don't like him because, he's more conservative. We're conservative too. They went down that road and they bought into George Santos and let this dude get elected. Now you find out this man is a thief. He's a crumb bum, and so on, right? My point in saying this is the Republicans didn't do what Democrats would have done if this had been a Democrat. They found all this stuff about it. They found out that a Democrat lied about the fact that he had a college degree, let alone a master's degree, that he went to a college that he never went to, never even set foot on a college campus. If they found out that he had set up a charity and then there was no charity, that was set up, that he took money from people to put into the charity, that he took the money in his pocket and paid for his toothpaste, and so on. If the Democrats saw that on somebody that occurred with a Democrat, the Democrats themselves would have come at that person. But the Republicans don't. Now, whether you like Democrats' tax policy or monetary policy or education policy or, whatever your thing is, you should at least want anybody who becomes an elected official to be a person of integrity,
Right.
to be a person whose word can be trusted.
Right.
If you can't get that minimum, you can't trust anything that person is doing. Why would I put you in a position where you can make decisions about my money when you're a thief? I would rather a dumb person be in a position to have voting power over my money than to have a thief have power over my money. At least a dumb person will try to figure out, maybe I should go to Charles and ask Charles the question, and so on, right? It's that kind of thing, right? So I went to an article written by Kyle Cheney, and Cheney's not related to Dick Cheney, just same last name, and Nicholas Wu. And it was entitled, GOP Lawmakers Were Deeply Involved in Trump's Plans to Overturn the Election. We didn't get, I'm so irritated about this because we've known this, most of what is going to be said in this article, we've known this since January of 2021. It is now November of 2023, literally 30 months later, and we're just now getting official confirmation of stuff that we've known about for over 2 years. For example, according to this article, it was written in Politico on April 23rd of 2022. It says Republican members of Congress were heavily involved in calls and meetings with former President Donald Trump and his top aides as they devised a strategy to overturn the election in December of 2020, according to new evidence filed in federal court a week ago Friday. Now, it's important for you to understand this. The people who did this, who were engaged in this, every one of them was engaged in crime. Even if you were a state assembly person or a state senator, or you were a U.S. congressperson or a U.S. senator, even if you were not covered by this law in terms of any criminal sanction that could be applied to you, it was at least a violation of the ethical code of the Congress and of the Senate. You would think that all of the people that were engaged in this conspiracy would have at least been censured by the Senate and censured by the House of Representatives. And some of these people should have been thrown out of office. If they're going to throw George Santos out of office for, taking some of his campaign money and using it to, what's Botox, by the way? What does that mean?
Botox is a drug, something that makes you, like if you want bigger lips, you put it and you make your lips bigger and make your face, kind of more luxurious, and that's what Botox is, chemical.
Why would a man be buying Botox?
Because he wants something to be a little bit more, I guess, appealing to him, something maybe more out.
So, but whatever the case, this is some sort of cosmetic. It's not something that you need to run your campaign. Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct. Okay. It's cosmetic. Yes,
so
cosmetic.
He took money to do that. He used the money, to go on trips, for himself. He used the money to buy clothes. He used the money to buy. This is your money now. Money he collects from you.
Wow.
He used the money to pay his rent.
Wow.
And that sort of stuff. So this is all despicable stuff. Maybe low level, but still despicable stuff.
Mr. Hare, just to be fair to him, isn't this the kind of stuff a lot of politicians do anyway? I mean, let's be honest.
Well, see, I don't know that. I mean, that's part of the problem, because liars keep saying this to us over and over and over again. And again, as I keep telling you, is a paradigm. You become what you hear. Mm-hmm. If you hear people saying all the time, politicians lie, politicians steal, politicians manipulate this and do that, without any evidence, they just tell you because that's how they feel. Right. They just keep repeating this.
Right.
You end up over a time, 2, 3, 4, 6, 46, 500 years hearing this, you start thinking, well, it must be true. Everybody keeps saying it.
Right.
It must be true.
You're right. Just like clowns used to be a friendly thing because we saw a lot of movies with clowns being demonic. Now clowns are demonic.
Kids are afraid of clowns. How in the world can kids be afraid of clowns?
Right, but that's because they see or
you become what you hear.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so, this is these people are poisoning the environment that we find ourselves living in. And so this is what we have to get our arms around and begin to tackle as a people. They're actually convincing us that there is something wrong with the American democracy. In fact, worse than that, they're trying to convince us that democracy itself is wrong. That if you have democracy, you run the risk of those dark-skinned people, those second generation, immigrant people, those LGBTQ plus people, becoming, your Congress people and your senators and your department heads and your president and your vice president.
And democracy, that should actually happen.
Exactly, but they present it as if it's some sort of there's a
cursed poison,
a asp type snake, that's going to bite you, with poison, and so a cobra is going to get you.
Right.
They present it in that way, and because of that, people who aren't thinking, who really aren't paying a whole lot of attention to the political environment that they live in. They're just sort of passersby. The TV's on, and they just hear stuff passing by. They're not thinking, and they become socialized into what they keep hearing over and over and over again.
When I was in the hospital, they had on Fox, so that lets me know who's in there.
There you go. Yeah.
But check this out. I was listening. Now I'm listening with Mr. Hair Ear. So the guy's talking. He says something on Fox. He goes, Hamas, there's people in America supporting Hamas, and then he goes, they got signs for Palestinians. And I'm like, hold up, what he just said was wrong. Palestinian people are not Hamas.
Right.
Hamas, but you see the association they put in people's ears. And poison.
And it's all of them.
Right.
Joe Biden even does it.
Yeah, wow.
Every one of them do it. They say Hamas and Palestinian as if they're the same word.
Right. They use it like that.
It is true that all of the members of Hamas are Palestinians. But that's only 20 or 30,000 people, and that's if you take the Israelis' word that there's that many people in the Hamas organization.
Right.
For all we know, there could be only 8 people in the Hamas organization.
Right.
We don't know, right? But whatever the case, whether it's 10 or it's 20,000, those are the Hamas people. Right. But there's 2.4 million Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip.
Innocent people.
Right. They don't have anything to do with this. They didn't do it. Right? And then you keep saying that, the Hamas, they killed, first they told you 1,400 people. The last 4 or 5 days, they've brought that down to 1,200 people. We don't really know what the number is, right? We're taking, their word for it.
Right.
And but whatever the case, they say these 1,200 people were killed by Hamas. Every time they talk about a hospital being flattened, 2 square blocks, of residential apartments being flattened, all these people being forced out of their homes, marching down a road or walking over rubble, of collapsed buildings and so on, with their little kids and people in wheelchairs, trying to walk from northern Gaza to southern Gaza and so on. And they talk about this in the context of, Hamas killed 1,200, people. At least 11,000 people are dead from the Israeli response. I want you to just put this in your mind. You don't have to take my word for it. I always ask you to test whatever I say against sources, and I try to give you sources so that you can go yourself and look at what I'm looking at and decide for yourself whether you believe what I'm saying to you. But they started talking about 11,000 Palestinians killed over a week ago, something like 8 or 9 days ago. They said there were 11,000 Palestinians killed by the Israeli strikes. This morning, they said there was 11,000 people killed by the Israeli strikes. Israel has been dropping hundreds of bombs on Gaza over the course of the past 9 days. Every single day, they're dropping hundreds of bombs on Palestine, blowing up buildings near hospitals, sometimes blowing up hospitals themselves, school buildings, apartment houses, commercial centers, and so on. They've been doing this over the course of the past 7, 8, 9 days, and yet they're still saying there's only 11,000 people that have been killed. What happened over the last week? They freeze the number because they want you to think that it's a lower number of people that are being impacted than actually are. They don't tell you about how many people were in those hospitals that were on life supports.
Right.
And when the fuel ran out, the power that ran their life support systems ran out, and they're dead.
I heard Biden's speech. He was talking about. He made it sound like, and I don't know. It could be true. He was saying, yeah, they hide in the hospitals. Well, we know that they'll hide anywhere, but that don't mean you bomb the whole place.
Well, you know, when they show you the pictures last night, you know, of guns and grenades that were hidden, you're looking at maybe 20 or 30 grenades over here, maybe 15 or 20, you know, what do they call them, AR-15s, or AK-47, you know, rifles, you know, over there, and some other, you know, tucked in some places, you know, in the basement. That's not a command center. That's not a command center. A command center, you got, you know, offices, you got caches of weapons,
right.
You got tanks, you got, you know, motorbikes, you got missile launchers, you know, right? That's what command centers are.
Right.
You know, these are places where clearly Hamas was the political entity that was given administrative control of the Gaza Strip back in 2007.
Right.
So they've been basically the government of the Gaza Strip since 2007.
Right.
So, of course, they put their defensive munitions in buildings that were their buildings.
Right.
The entire Gaza Strip is almost a city, right? I mean, it's mostly urbanized. Mm-hmm. So where else would you put the stuff? Would you, you know, over here next to this fountain, you know, we've got 46 missile launchers, put a sign on it and say this is where they were. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Of course, they hide their weapons where they can,
right?
And they put them in places where they think they would need it.
Right.
If they felt they were sometimes in a power struggle with the Palestinian, what they call it, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, mm-hmm. they were in a power struggle with them, or with Hezbollah, and if that occurred, that was usually a fight between one militia group and another militia group.
Right.
Well, they had to have weapons to fight, right? To defend. What happens if you have something like Boko Haram, the Nigerian Muslim-oriented group that was fighting like the ISIS battle, but they were fighting it in North Africa, right? They attacked a school in Nigeria and stole 300 girls. Remember that? It took forever to get those girls back, and some of the girls didn't survive. They were killed.
Wow.
Many were raped, and so on, right? And so if you were the rulers of Nigeria, you'd want to have your weapons and your soldiers close to where they need to be, so if a school gets attacked, you could get there in time and defend, and so on. So they may have weapons stashed in different places. I'm not trying to excuse or justify whatever Hamas is about. If Hamas attacked Israel and murdered 1,200 or 1,300 or 1,400 people, they should go to prison. If they get killed in the course of trying to catch them, then they just get killed. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. Mm-hmm. You need to fall.
Right.
And if the Hamas organization supports what these people did, then the Hamas organization should disappear as a administrative agency over Gaza. Right. You can't be the government of Gaza if you're a murderer. Mm-hmm. We don't need to go through a lot of ideological struggle about that. If you're a murderer, you can't be the governor of Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. Period. Right. So the United Nations should step in with a bunch of other nations, you know, the Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Qatar and Abu Dhabi and Lebanon and so on, Syria, should come together and say, listen, this organization cannot be the administrators or the government of the Gaza Strip. And they say, why? Because they're murderers, because they're rapists, because they killed children, right. You know, and so on. They can't be the government. whatever you all say about them, let them go to Paris and be some sort of outcast group someplace. But they cannot be the government of Gaza. And then try to work out, well, who should be? Who's in a position to support the people that live in the Gaza Strip so that they can have water, so they can have lights, so they can have heat, they can have medicine, they can have ambulances, they can have taxi cabs, and so on. That's what needs to be done. Why isn't that the conversation? You can't tell me that I'm the only one who can think that out. Everybody on earth should be able to say the same thing that I'm saying. You don't have to be smart to figure that out. Dumb people can figure that out.
Right, but the way they put the news on, I was listening, and it's just everything is distorted. Everything is geared to. When I look at Fox News, everything that they say, they'll have some truth, but everything is geared to make Biden look like he's a clown old man with a disease, need to get out.
Yep.
And then everything is kind of promote Trump.
Yep.
When I look at Fox News.
And then nobody ever asks, well, what would Trump be doing if Trump was in this position?
Right.
What do his words say to you that he would be doing?
Right.
Trump told you that if it was up to him, we should have governments like North Korea. We should have governments like China. We should have dictatorships,
total
right?
Dictatorship.
He said if we did this, if we have a strong man that's in control, then other countries will be afraid of you.
Right.
The reason why other countries are afraid of the United States militarily is because the United States has fought wars and won militarily. That's why they're afraid. They're not afraid because you run your mouth and you're talking smack.
Right.
They're afraid because they think they're going to get hurt.
Right.
That's just the reality. The reason why you build a strong military is so that people know that if they cross you, it's going to cost you.
It's going to cost you, right.
Right?
Right.
So, again, it turns me back to this issue about democracy being slaughtered in the United States. What is happening now is you can't trust your government. Not because your government has been documented to have done something wrong. Voting has taken place in this country. Voter registration is taking place in this country. Votes are being counted correctly, in this country. People are getting elected to office. But the media is taking up the chorus of these agents of the Republicans and these conservatives who are so afraid that they're going to lose control of the United States. Their population group is going to lose control of the United States, that they keep saying that the American democratic system doesn't work anymore. You can't trust the votes. You can't trust registration. You can't trust, the counts of the votes and so on. They take one or two incidences where some guy, his wife dies and he votes for his wife. That happens. How many times do you think that happens in the course of an election cycle in a year? 20? Maybe
probably more,
maybe
yeah.
200 times in the entire country.
Yeah, probably.
That occurs. Right.
At least.
Right. How many times do you have a voting machine? What do you call it when they break down? Fail. A voting machine fail.
Right.
And when it fails, you had votes that were going through that machine that wind up either not getting counted or get counted to the wrong people. But you have a paper trail. So whenever a voting machine that's where I was trying to get malfunctions, then you take that voting machine out, you replace it with another machine, and then you have those forensic people that they have in the Board of Elections, systems, and they go through that machine and they physically match the votes in the machine with the physical votes that were those papers that you put into the scanner. They physically match the votes on the machine with the votes that were processed on that scanner by the physical document. So they know for certain what votes were counted for what votes were cast for what person, so that the counts are correct.
Gotcha.
They do that every single time. Every single time. They never not do it, right? The thing that people don't understand is you have people who are been working for the Board of Elections, part-time workers. They just show up during election season. A lot of them are 86,000 years old. You know how they are, right?
Older, mature people.
They come. They need canes to get into the building. but they've been running elections since time began. When Adam and Eve were still trying to figure out what to do with that apple, they was out there running, elections and so on, right?
Exaggerating a bit. There, right
Maybe
there.
a little bit, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
These people are the backbone of the election system in this country.
Right.
Because they work for like $50, $75 a day or something like that. I mean, peanuts they work for. They do it because they believe in the American democracy.
Right.
And they're Republicans, they're independents, they're Democrats, they're short people, they're fat people, they're LGBTQ people, they're brown people, they're yellow people,
Right.
they're you just see them all the time. My first wife started doing this back in we got married in '77, so this had to be the Reagan cycle in 1980. She became one of these election workers. She's been doing it ever since. 45 years, or 43 years. She's been doing this ever since, right?
Mr. Hare, I've been hearing Reagan a lot. What's that about?
Well, I always think of Reagan as a break point because the civil rights movement, the way that we think of it, it hit its crescendo in 1964 and 1965. That's when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, the Voter Rights Act in 1965 was passed, the Economic Opportunity Act was passed in 1965, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was passed in, I think it was 1968. And so this was the crescendo, when the movement to take marginalized people, from the bottom rungs of the society and getting out of their way and allowing marginalized people to not be marginalized anymore.
Right. Give them access to everything the other people have.
Right. I mean, they should not be marginalized anymore.
Right.
There should not be any marginalized people.
Right.
So that crescendo occurred during that time period. When Lyndon Johnson became the president, that's, Jack Kennedy, had been murdered. So Lyndon Johnson took over in '63. He won again. He won in '68. Right. Yeah, he won against in '68. And no, I'm sorry, that was Nixon. Nixon won in '68. Lyndon Johnson, he took over in November of '63. So, 64, right? I'm not getting it right now. Yeah, no, in '64, Lyndon Johnson ran again and won, and he used his mandate to push the Great Society programs. The Great Society programs were the actual mechanisms to implement the reversal of the marginalization of marginalized people in this country. In other words, you had people that had been kept out of employment. I hear these unions talking all this stuff about the friends of marginalized people and whatnot. Well, in 1964, it was the unions keeping black and brown people out of those jobs.
Wow.
Through the union. Okay, so I mean, we need to be real careful about who your bedfellows are, right? There may be somebody in your bed with you don't even know he's there, but that's another story. The point is that laws were passed to stop all of these abuses that were keeping people from being able to vote. You still have in Alabama, they just cheat. They just change the congressional district lines so that you don't get any congressional representation. They just do it on purpose. And when you say you can't do it, that's illegal, it's against the Voter Rights Act, they say, well, sue me. Then you sue, you go to a judge, the judge is a Republican judge, and the judge says, well, yeah, he's doing that to you, and what are you going to do about it? And nothing ever happens.
Wow.
You even get the Supreme Court to order a change in the district lines, and the Alabama legislature still refuses to do it, and they still haven't been changed.
Wow.
After all, this is the third time they've told them to change these lines, and they still haven't done it.
Incredible.
Right? So I'm just trying to help us to understand what we're talking about here. So you had this point where the crescendo of the civil rights movement takes place, and all these rights and all of these programs. Model cities got put in place during that time period. The urban development assistance grant programs, transportation stuff, was done during this time period. I mean, Health and Human Services became a completely different agency. in terms of the departments of social services, guaranteeing people eligibility, in their benefits from social services. All these things were done. But the Reagan administration began to reverse all of that stuff.
Right.
So that's why I always talk about Reagan, because he was the point when those efforts to unmarginalize people began to break down, and remarginalizing people began to happen again.
Okay.
Beginning particularly with the huge tax cuts.
That's why they talk
Right.
about Reagan. They like
Right.
Reagan because
Love him for that.
Reagan kept them as priority as privilege.
Yep, and I'm not going to be ugly. I'm going to respect the music that you got there, telling us that it's
Thank you,
time
sir.
for our commercials. So
Yeah, thank you, sir.
if you all don't go away, please stay tuned. We look forward to talking on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host. We're here with Willie H. I don't know if I introduced you before, Willie.
I don't think you did, but
I just started talking
They
to
know
you.
I'm here. They know I'm here.
Willie H. That's AYTCH, Willie H.
Yes.
And if you need to have a program where you need somebody to be able to run the electronics, the what do you call it, the information technology apparatus for
Stream
it,
into
live
some
streaming,
IT,
you just grab Willie H. and he'll get it done for you. You told me things went real well last Saturday on the high school football games at Rich Stadium, right?
Yeah, they went fantastic. It was good to see the teams out there. They call that pure sports because those kids are not getting paid, but they're putting their heart into it, and they really want to win. These are some of the best teams, and in this.
Did the kids keep their hands to themselves, or were they out here fighting, for fist fights? If we can't beat you on the football field, we'll beat you on the fighting field.
Well, you usually have that near the end of the game where the losing team, and so you that's normal to have, and because they want to win, and when they're not winning, especially at the end, that fourth quarter, it's like
let's teach sportsmanship. Keep your hands to yourself.
For the most part, though, they were good. It wasn't no really bad. The refs kept calling, though. My God. That was the only thing I wasn't crazy about. It was
because they get paid by the call, right?
No, I know they don't get paid by the call.
All right, so I just wanted to recenter us on this frame of reference that I'm trying to tell you that I just got really soaked into as I was listening to the news media reports this week, and part of what is just in my spirit is, why is it that the Republican Party itself does not sanction the people in the Republican Party who actually conspired with a lot of them together to overturn the 2020 election? Why didn't the Republicans react to that? I mean, I understand that you can have bad guys in the party. That's reality. There's going to be bad people everywhere. But when that occurs, and you know it occurred, you have documentation that it occurred, why didn't you do anything about it? When you had 127 Republicans vote to not accept the Electoral College votes on January 6th, even after the Capitol was attacked by 6,000 advocates for the Republican cause. When that occurred, why was there no sanction by the Republicans of the Republicans? Maybe it was right that it was legal for those senators to cast that vote, but for the Republican Party as a whole to do this with no basis for it, no documents to support it, you would think that the Republican Party as a party would say to the nation what these people were doing was setting in motion a cancer that would spread and cause destruction of our democracy, and we do not support that. Why wouldn't the Republican Party stand up like that? But it has not done it at all. I'm not satisfied with what the Democrats have done, on that, because the Democrats made it seem like it was some sort of an accident, like a lightning bolt struck and this thing occurred. It's not a part of a growing cancer in this society. It is a growing cancer in this society. There is a body of people in this country, a significantly large body of people in this country, that are so afraid that the United States is going to become a majority-minority country and change its nature as to who it is that's in charge of the body politic of the United States.
Right.
That they're willing to do any and everything to reverse the tide of demographics in this country and keep themselves in power at any cost. Even if the cost is the end of democracy, that's what they're willing to do. That should be being attacked by everybody. All of us should be against that.
Right.
So I'm just trying to get us to focus on this. I looked at Mark Meadows. He was caught communicating with Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, about efforts to get the Georgia officials to overturn the results of the election. The mere fact that you would call a state Secretary of State and ask them to do that, in and of itself, is something that should have been reported and should have been responded to as a party. And both parties should have responded to it. Mark Meadows was caught texting with Scott Perry about plans to install a low-level functionary, Jeffrey Clark, to become the Attorney General of in the Justice Department. I'm sorry. Do we have a caller hanging on? Well, let me grab that call real quick. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yes. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Not bad. I was you're talking about the elections, and I don't know if you discussed it before, but I believe it was in Mississippi where they, I guess they had a few close elections there, and what they did in the black areas was they ran out of ballots. Right. And,
right.
Instead of making sure that everyone could vote, they let the state allowed the poll stations to stay open for another hour. But there was, according to what I've heard, there was still a lot of people who were in line and
who didn't get it. Yeah, they never got a chance to vote, and the people when they ran out of ballots, you had people who were in the process of voting, and the ballots ran out. So they had already begun the process of voting, and they weren't able to cast their votes either. So you're absolutely right, and that did not get corrected. They kept the polls open for another hour, but you probably had 60 to 80 people in line, maybe more than that from one of the reports that I read, that were still in line, never got to vote at all, never physically got into the polling place. They were just in line.
Right.
So,
and it was in a lot of different areas, but they were all black areas.
Right. And that's been the theme, that Willie and I have been talking about, that they are marginalizing people, but they're doing it in ways that are clearly racially or class based. So they always feel that, as you saw Donald Trump say, he didn't want to have all of the votes in Georgia overturned. He just wanted the votes in Fulton County overturned. Why? Because 70% of the African people in Georgia live in Fulton County. So he said, well, I know that they didn't vote for me, so kill all of their votes. The same thing in Detroit. I think it's Wayne County in Michigan. And the same thing. Donald Trump, he didn't want all of Michigan's votes to be thrown out. He just wanted Wayne County's votes to be thrown out because that's where 70-80% of the black people live. So he wanted to kill their votes because he figured if he did that, then the Electoral College votes would have been a majority for him, and he would have won the presidency in 2020. Cheating is what the Republicans seem to want to do, and cheating seems to be an accepted paradigm in today's Republican Party. That's
correct.
Yeah, and this is different. I mean, there's always been cheating in American elections in certain ways,
Right.
but this just blatant, outright, I'll destroy your votes. I'll give your voting machines away to other people and let them count your votes for us and whatnot. I'll throw out your absentee ballots and just not count them, and things like that. That kind of stuff is relatively new, and it is insidious. And if that does not get challenged and does not get stopped, there's no telling where we're going to be as a country. There may not be a democracy for us to defend, 2 or 3 years from now.
And another thing is they don't emphasize the fact that when these cyber ninjas and all these people, when they did these things and analyzed the voting machines, that they weren't allowed to use them anymore. So it cost that community more money because they had to buy all the votes.
They said it cost them $2 or $3 million. Yeah, $2 or $3 million they had to spend because they not only did they have to replace those voting machines, they also had to reconstruct what was in those voting machines before they destroyed them. They had to reconstruct the votes that were in them so they would have a permanent record of what the votes were that were cast on those machines. So this took a lot of time, as well as buying new machines. You had to pay people to do all of this reconstruction, type work. Then you had to seal these votes up and put them in a special place so that if anybody comes back, later on and says, I think you guys cheated me in this election, you'd have a record to be able to go back to. All that takes up time and money and whatnot. I mean, it's just, it is insidious what these people have been doing and been allowed to do. And the fact that they do it, and then all that gets happen is people go tisk, 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 and they go to the next day, right? If this had been Democrats doing this, the media would have requested that you be hung. They would want Benedict Arnold to be, your caseworker, and so on. I mean, it's just crazy, what is going on here. But I'm appreciating the fact that you've been paying attention. I see you've been on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Here. I just have one other question for you. I see now that Joe Manchin says he's not going to run for re-election.
Right.
And you're wondering who's going to take his place. And my question is, why weren't Democrats trying to get rid of Joe Manchin anyway? Why wasn't there a push to have somebody to get him to run against him in the primaries and move him out? Because he has not been nothing but a pain in the side of Democrats for years. Right. And they haven't had anyone who they said, okay, we got a guy here who we can run against him and get him out of Congress. And I just don't understand why now that he's quit, why we're now just trying to get him out of there. I've been trying to get a replacement.
Right.
I don't understand.
Right. So you understand, Joe Manchin is a senator in a state that is a very conservative state. They typically vote for a Republican, even though there are more registered Democrats in West Virginia than there are Republicans. They tend to vote for the Republican because the Democrats are very conservative in that state. Joe Manchin was able to sell the Democrats that, well, I'm as conservative as you are, but I'm a Democrat. And so they went along with, like in the old days, in the 1940s and 50s, you had the boll weevil Democrats, before John Kennedy took power in the United States, you had the bold weevil Democrats. These were racist, slave-holding or slave-wanting type people that were in the Democratic Party, but they were Democrats. They organized as Democrats because the machinery in the state was populated largely by Democrats. So if you wanted to have political leverage in states like Georgia and Florida and Alabama and Mississippi, you had to work with the Democratic Party because they were the ones that were in charge of so much of the processes. Well, that's the case in West Virginia. So Manchin basically was a Democrat. How do you say it? A Republican in Democratic clothing, right? That's what he was. And so with Manchin stepping down, the likelihood is a Republican will wind up winning that office rather than a Democrat winning that office, because the Democrats in West Virginia are really not that aligned with the Democratic Party's values. They tend to be more aligned with the values of the people that are afraid that white people are being replaced by black and brown people in this country. They're in that group of people in our society.
Yeah, that's why I thought that over the last few years they should have been trying to change the mindset of these people.
You're right.
This man hasn't done anything to help people here in this state. And
well, you know what they had to do is
by media, you have to have people in the party.
Right.
It needs to be ahead of the game and start trying to, because that's what the Republicans did. You see what Liz Cheney, as much as she was behind Trump,
yep,
they got rid of her.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, see, if you're in West Virginia and you're running for the Senate seat, the first thing you got to do is say, I'm voting for coal. I'm voting to ensure that the coal industry still gets money from the federal government and that we keep the coal industry going, because there are 13,000 coal miners, in the state of West Virginia. And Joe Manchin has been about protecting their jobs. Also, keep in mind, Joe Manchin has his own business, and he gets about $5 million of income out of his own business, which is a coal mining related business. So this should not be, but that's the reality. They don't do what's right; they do what's in the interest of their money. And you know what, James Brown? He told you this a long time ago. You was a child when he said this, but this is his truth. He said money will change you, and time will turn you on.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. That's my version of rap music. So anyway, you had well, we can't go much further than that. I want to talk a little bit about our cousin Mike Johnson, our new Speaker of the House, who replaced Kevin McCarthy, right? And the thing that you find, at least that I find intriguing, is the media makes it seem like this is a great thing that Mike Johnson delivered on. He got the government to stay open past February 17th, because he got a budget deal for a continuing resolution to keep government open, and the president is signing that continuing resolution today, and government's not going to close, and it's a good thing. This is what Mike Johnson did. That's not true. This is what the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives did. Mike Johnson was trying to get a budget resolution pushed through that was going to cause, in some departments, a 29% spending cut in some departments of government. In most departments, it would have been anywhere from 8 to 15% cuts, except for the Department of Defense, which would have gotten a 6 to 8% increase under Mike Johnson's construct of a budget. The Democrats fought that. And because the Democrats fought it and held out and held out and held out, Johnson was forced to put forward a budget resolution that they call a clean bill, which meant that they just kept the budgets for every department of the federal government intact exactly as it is right now until, I think for most departments, January 19th. and for some departments, their budget will last up until February the 2nd of 2024. So, but the media makes it sound like Mike Johnson did this when in fact it was the Democratic Party that forced this on Mike Johnson. He wanted to do what the Republicans wanted to do, which was to slash government and then slash taxes for the rich people even more than they've already been slashed. This issue of spending cuts, every time it's talked about in the media, it's talked about as if the spending cuts itself is a good thing, that the Democrats are holding on to these high spending and so on, when in reality that's not what's occurring. What's occurring is that the Republican Congress has controlled parts of Congress such that they've been able to get through these spending cuts at the national level, and these spending cuts have created a loss of revenue that, because you have the same expenses but lower revenue, it creates deficits. Those deficits then keep adding to our debt. That's how this stuff occurred in the first place. We were talking about Ronald Reagan before. In Ronald Reagan's first year of office in 1981, all the income that you earned above $5 million in a year was taxed at 91%. Ronald Reagan got that knocked down to 70%, right? And then, he got other classes of income knocked down such that income taxes went down, or the corporate and, not corporate, but personal income taxes went down by almost 14% during Reagan's administration. Then he had to increase taxes again in the last 2 or 3 years of administration because they couldn't get enough money out of the lower tax rates to be able to pay their bills. Mm-hmm. So they had to increase taxes again. When George Bush became president, this was 1998, yes, 1989 to 1992. When George Bush, the first George Bush, became president, he lowered taxes again. Then he had to increase taxes because there wasn't enough revenue to be able to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And they crucified him, in the American press. But that's because the American press is championing the lowering of expenses while simultaneously lowering taxes. When if the issue was your deficit, you would want to hold the line on expenses and increase your revenue, right. Either by increasing taxes or growing the size of the economy. So instead of the economy being, say, $10 trillion, it becomes $12 trillion, and you get taxes off of that next $2 trillion, and those new taxes off of that bigger economy pay for your higher expenses.
Well, you say American press. All I could think of is demand. The American press is demand, which means they're the owner of the media. They're the owner, so of course.
And Willie, you say this all the time, and we can't forget that. The people who make up the rulers of the American press, they're the ones who are the billionaires.
Right.
So they're advocating for their own self-interest. They won't even let their news anchors talk about it the way that we're talking about it right now.
Right. And they pay their news anchors, and I'm sure, when they do the right thing, according to them, those anchors get blessed somehow, some way.
Yep. So, McCarthy gets credit, from the media for averting a government shutdown, making it seem like the Republicans have reasonable people in the Republican Party. Mm. But the reality is, if the Republicans had their way, if they had more control over the House of Representatives, mm-hmm. they would have been pushing forth draconian cuts in the budgets of these various service systems. The reason why you don't have a child care system in this country where it's walking distance or pretty close distance from where you are to where the nearest child care facility is because the money that Joe Biden had put together to get that done, the Republicans stripped it out of the budget. They wouldn't pass the budget for 2022 unless that stuff was stripped out. The expansion of the child care tax credit that would have given you somewhere between $250 to $300 a month to help you with your child care for each child that you had under 17 in your family. The reason why that got killed is because Biden got it passed, and then when it got to the budget season, the Republicans said we won't have a budget if you keep that in there. They were going to shut down government unless that was taken out.
Right.
But you don't hear the media talking about that. The things that you say you want as a people, clean water, renewable energy, you know, and so on. The things that you say you want, Biden was not only advocating for these things, he actually was doing those things. And the Republicans killed those things, and you treat the Republicans as if they were doing something good, and the Democrats as if they were doing something bad. That's the stuff. I mean, how do you keep putting Biden up against Donald Trump and all these things you keep saying that Biden isn't doing enough of? He isn't doing inflation reduction fast enough. He's not doing this or that, you know, well enough. But what's your alternative? Your alternative is Donald Trump. If Biden is doing a bad job in managing the Israeli-Hamas crisis, what do you think Donald Trump would be doing if he had control?
Right. Oh my God.
Okay. I mean, it's so Joe Biden is trying to keep control of the discussion in America and not have wildfires, you know, in the American public, you know, going on.
Right.
So he's saying all the right things to make the Israelis feel good about what they're doing, while simultaneously saying, but I do respect the fact that these are Palestinian human beings, you know, because we keep talking about them as if they're not human beings.
Right, absolutely.
They're absolute human beings, and they should not be getting killed.
Right.
But he talks about this in the context of telling people they need to relocate. We'll help you relocate to the South. How does that help the Palestinians?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, their jobs are gone, their houses are gone, their food is gone, their businesses are gone, their money in their banks is gone, and so on. How are you helping them?
Yeah.
Right? But if Donald Trump was in charge, there wouldn't even be any Palestinians. They'd wind up making Palestinians extinct. I know we got the music playing. You know, there's songs about that too. Let the music play. Never mind.
Let the music play, yeah.
I know you know the song. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Monday. It's going to be a long weekend. Stay safe. We look forward to seeing you then here at Living Now. Living Right Now. No, that's the wrong program.
Living for the People.
Living for the People, 91.3 FM, WBNY. So you're doing like 4 or 5 programs a week. You get crazy, right?